Stress is when your body's knocked out of balance or knocked out of homeostasis. The stress response is what your body innately does to return itself back to order. And so if we have three different types of stresses, the first stress is physical stress. It's trauma, it's injury, it's accidents, it's falls. And then you have chemical stress, flus, pesticides, pollutants, hormones in food, blood sugar levels. And then you have emotional stress, which is family tragedies, traffic jams, internet connections, second mortgages, single parenting. In each one of these three stresses, the body is always knocked out of balance. And then there is an innate function where the body does its best to return itself back to order. Now, every organism in nature is designed for short-term stress. And when we live in stress, we live in survival. So if a gazelle is grazing in the Serengeti and it's being chased by a lion, the moment the predator-prey relationship begins, there is a reaction that turns on what's called the sympathetic nervous system. And when the sympathetic nervous system is turned on, we mobilize enormous amounts of energy for some threat. Now, if the gazelle outruns the lion, 15 minutes later, it goes back to grazing. Short-term stress, body returns back to homeostasis, energy is then consumed, the organism rests and repairs for growth and balance. But with human beings, it seems that we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. And we can begin to anticipate some future event. We can begin to expect something to happen or think about and begin to plan for some worst case scenario. So the privilege of being a human being is that we can make thought more real than anything else. Then as we begin to attend to some future scenario, we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. Now the body is the unconscious mind. It does not know the difference between some experience in the environment and some emotion that you create from an experience based on a memory by thought alone. To the body, it's exactly the same. So as we begin to think about our problems, as we begin to plan for the worst case scenario, as we begin to forecast and get prepared for bad news or something that may happen, the body, as the unconscious mind, is beginning to respond as if the event is actually happening. Now, if we turn on the stress response and we can't turn it off, now we're headed for disease. So what was once highly adaptive in evolution all of a sudden becomes very maladaptive. And so if a person is subject to, say, physical stress, like they break their leg, and then as they break their leg, they realize they can't go to work, and all of a sudden, now that they know they can't go to work, now they have emotional stress. If they get the flu and they feel terrible, and then they start taking medications, and those medications produce side effects that produce a chemical stress, and then they feel worse, now they have emotional stress. So it seems like, for the most part, most of our stresses wind up as psychological or emotional stress. So we have this ability to make thought more real than anything else, and because of that, we can unfold the past bitter memory that's tattooed in the recesses of our gray matter. In moments it comes to life, and to us it's real. And the body, as the unconscious mind, begins to respond as if that event is actually happening. The body actually is emotionally believing that it's in that experience. So it seems like most stresses end up as psychological stress or emotional stress. But I think the key element more than anything else is that if we keep mobilizing enormous amounts of energy for some threat, real or imagined, to protect us from something in our external environment, we have very little energy in our internal environment. So cancer cells get together and now they decide to start a family, and there's no homeland security to protect the immune system is actually weakened because the body's actually mobilizing all of its energy for something in the external world. So there's a compromise between the internal world and the external world when we're living in stress. And what happens is there's no energy for long-term building projects. There's no energy for growth and repair because the body's living in a constant state of emergency. So if you look at then the redundancy of those particular actions, physical stress, physical trauma, emotional stress, chemical stress. It's those three things where the body actually never has a chance to recover back to order, and that imbalance becomes the new balance, and it begins to create disease. If you look at some of the latest research that's being done just on the stress response and stress in general, we know for an absolute fact that the chemicals of stress begin to dysregulate and downregulate the genes that begin to create disease. So if you think about this now, we know then that if stress creates disease or dysregulates genes or pushes the genetic buttons that create disease, and then we know that we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, now you have to ask the question, that means that we can turn on the stress response just by thought. That means that our thoughts are actually making us sick. So the real question is, if our thoughts can make us sick, is it possible that our thoughts can make us well?